Hey everyone, I am Scott Hart with Scott Hart Voice. I know it's an original name, right? So today I am going to be showing you guys my audiobook production process, how I do everything. I know Travis Baldry has already done a video on his process, and it's absolutely fantastic. I love his video. For those of you guys in the indie Facebook group, you should be able to see the link. If you ever do, just do a search within the group and you'll be able to find it. It's fantastic. I may be glancing over a few of the topics that he talked about, but not very much. I'm going to be talking more about my particular production process and how I do things. And you'll notice one of the things already on the screen is that I use the multitrack editor. Travis, well, so does Travis. However, I try and keep all of my work in the multitrack editor. That's what I was trying to say. So, if you haven't seen his video yet, I highly suggest it. It's really good. He shows you a lot of stuff with spectral view, and the waveform editor and stuff like that. And I may be jumping a little bit into it, but mostly I'm going to be showing you how I leverage the multitrack editor and how I version all my files. So this is the most recent chapter in the audiobook that I'm currently recording. It's Tales of the New World Book 1 by Stephen White. And this is my raw P&R punch and roll that you'll see here. I may end up going to the booth just to show you guys a little bit about why I use both Adobe Audition 2020 and 2019. Because I do have 2019 open up here, but it's on my third monitor in my recording booth. So, yeah. Well, I'll just go ahead and talk about that right now, actually. So the reason I use 2019 is so I can use Travis Baldry's punch and roll recording plugin. It is fantastic. I have yet to find another way of recording in Adobe Audition that is good as this. Like, there's no other way. I've done a book with the clicker method. I've done books with the punch and roll, and Travis's plugin it really is the best way to record. And I'm actually really hoping that he's able to get an update out there for it to run in 2020. The only reason I have 2019 is so I can run the punch and roll plugin. That's the only reason why. So what I do is in my recording booth, I'll just show you guys real quick if I can. There we go. So here's my recording booth on the outside of my desk, right? We can even see the screen that I'm looking at. So in my, whoa, let's fix that. So in my recording booth, I have my monitor set up there with a wireless keyboard and mouse. It's kind of difficult if the wireless receiver is too far away from the mouse and keyboard, just so you know. It may not work very well if it's on the other side of the booth, because the booth is just so dense in material that the signal can't get through. So anyway, in the booth, I have my wireless keyboard and mouse, and that's where I use Adobe Audition 2019. That's how I do my recording. If you guys want to see a little bit of the recording, I can do that a bit later. But suffice it to say, when I'm done with the recording, I will have this track right here, this track number 1. And this right here, this is just a default multi-track session that I have a few different, so the entire chapter recorded in track 1. I have my pickups in track 2, and I have my room tone in track 3. And I'm going to show you how I use all of this for doing my editing and whatnot. So anyway, I go into the booth, I do the recording via Punch and R, P&R or Punch and Roll. Mix those two together and get Punch and R. And when I'm done with that, I will I'll listen back through just to do an initial proofing. I don't trust myself ultimately, but sometimes I am able to catch a few things, so there aren't so many things left to do when my actual proofer gets the file. In this case, I had, I think, four pickups across what was it, 17 and a half, 18 minutes long. What's the end of this? Control end. 1746. So that's not too bad, actually. There was one chapter in the series I did before this. I had 25 pickups in a 20-minute chapter. And it wasn't because of inaccuracy and just saying things wrong. It was based on how I had my hardware set up. I kept getting lots of clicks and pops. And so that's something I wanted to talk about here. Oh, real quick before I say that, I did want to mention, so I do my pickups in track 2, and then track 3 is my room tone. Let's talk about the hardware setup menu. So if you hit Control-Shift-K, it brings up your hardware, it brings up your preferences. You can also do this via, I think it's Edit Preferences. Yeah, Edit Preferences, and then you can pull this up. If I don't like having to have a lot of mouse clicks, so I just hit Control-Shift-K. And you come down to audio hardware. And there are 2 device classes in here that you can use, ASIO and MME. Wasapi, I'd really never touch that. I never touch that device class profile. I usually only touch ASIO and MME. When I'm recording, I use ASIO. When I'm doing my post-recording work, I use MME. And it's not because one is better than the other. It's because when I'm usually streaming my work, when I'm using Streamlabs OBS, it actually doesn't play back the audio to you guys. So, and what I'll show you what I mean. So, inside Streamlabs OBS, you can see that I'm talking to you guys. This is my audio input on my interface. This is my desktop audio. When I turn this track 1 on, I'm going to unmute it real quick. You guys won't be able to hear any of the playback. Watch this. I can hear it. I can hear it just fine. You can see that it's playing back, but Streamlabs OBS isn't pulling anything. This bar was never moving because it doesn't pick up sound playing on the computer in an ASIO format. So if I come over here and I switch over to MME, and now I play it. Now you guys can hear it.
She focused a cool stare on him and didn't budge nor say another word.
So now you guys can hear it. And I don't know why Streamlabs does this. I'm completely at a loss for why this happens to begin with, but that's the case nonetheless. So in Control-Shift-K, audio hardware, I always do my post-production in MME, and I always do my recording in ASIO. There we go. The reason I do ASIO for my recording is so I can manually set my sample rate here and my buffer size to what I want it to be. I usually record at 128. I think I could get away. Hold on. If it's going to change. Come on. I don't know why it's not changing. Let's switch back out and back to ASIO. Well, that's weird. I wonder why it did that. Yeah, we'll save whatever changes. I'm going to reopen this real quick. I don't know why it wasn't switching over to 128. Anyway, it allows me to set the sample rate to what I want it to be, and also the buffer size. Buffer size, if you get too small, then you're going to run into some issues with the clicking and popping, and that's what happened to me. I kept getting all sort. Why is it doing this to me? I can't change it back to 128. I'll have to figure that out later. Maybe a restart of my system or something. Sometimes when Windows updates are needed, it just kind of tanks, but it doesn't say I need them. I don't know. I'll figure it out later. Let's reopen that multi-track editor. What was I going to say now? Oh, right. It allows me to set the buffer size because if it's too small, I get pops. If it's too big, I run out of RAM. So you need to find a happy medium. Oh, yeah. Thank you, Jubilee. I totally forgot to turn this off. We're already started. Thank you. I keep getting myself sidetracked. Oh boy. All right. So buffer size, you have to play with it. And for me, 128 is where I like it to be. And if you use Discord like I do, something very interesting to note, excuse me. Something very interesting to note is you need to have your buffer size set to 16 and your sample rate set to 48K. Otherwise, people on the other side of you, on the other end of talking with you, and sometimes on your end, you're going to hear lots of clicks and popping sounds. It's insane. It is absolutely crazy how many pops and clicks everyone's going to hear. And so with Discord, you need to make sure, if you're a Discord user like me, make sure that your ASIO settings are set to 48K and a 16 size buffer. That's when I'm talking with people in Discord. If I'm recording, I change it up to 128. And I would love to change it up to 128 right now, but I don't know why the thing is hating me. Like, I should be able to switch it over to 128 right now, but apparently, like, Audition is hating me right at the moment. I don't know why. So anyway. All right. That is all I wanted to say for the ASIO/MME settings. Like I said, ASIO for recording and Discord, MME for post-production process. So my watchers, my viewers can listen on to what I'm doing. Unfortunately, when I'm recording in the booth and I'm still in ASIO and I'm doing my initial proof, they'll see me just standing there listening to myself, but they can't hear any audio. So that's fun. All right. Let's talk about how to leverage the multi-track editor. And the first thing I wanted to say is I am not like the most professional at this. I am not a sound engineer. Everything I've learned, man, my there we go. That's better. Everything I learned in multi-track is pretty much everything I learned from Mike Russell from Music Radio Creative. If you haven't taken a look at his channel and you want to learn more about Audition, how to leverage multi-track editor, what you can do in the multi-track editor, go to his YouTube channel. It's absolutely amazing. I cannot say enough good stuff about what he has done. Music Radio Creative on YouTube. His name is Mike Russell, and he is phenomenal. Absolutely fantastic. So, like I said, let's just get started here on this process. So what I have showing here on my screen right now is the default multi-track editor with some recordings in there. In order to do the recording, you would come in here, you would change your input type from none, and you would want to go to mono because audiobooks are always mono. Arm it for recording, and now you can see that it's ready to record whatever I want it to record. This is where Baldry's punch and roll plugin comes into play. Once again, I would be recording in 2019, so I could use Travis's plugin. But for everything else, I would bring it on over to Adobe Audition 2020. After the recordings are done and I'm ready to go into my post process, this is what I would do. First off, if you're wondering about the recording, you can only record in the first track on the session. And so to get around that, you would bring up your tracks. So number one, I'm going to turn this off from ARM Record. I'm going to mute the track, and I'm going to come over here, and now I'm going to tell this baby to record here. And now I can record in I could record on this track if I wanted to. So I could record my pickup and then copy it down into the other track and whatnot. And then that's how I can also record my room tone. I can bring my room tone track up, and all I'm doing is I'm grabbing the handle over here on the left, this little color bar, and I'm bringing it up to the top. That's all I'm doing. I'm not changing anything else. And that's how you can reorder your tracks. If you want to rename the tracks, and I usually do, you just click on the track name and change the track name. So this would be raw P&R, right? It's my raw punch and roll recording. And here, this is my first set of pickups, so I call it pickups 1. And here, this is my room tone, so I'm just going to rename it to room tone. Boom. Like I said, I have multiple stages of pickups. I like to record as many of the pickups as I can catch during the actual recording session. And the reason I do that is because pickups between different recording sessions, as hard as you can try, it will never sound the exact same. It won't. And so what I like to do is when I'm in the booth making the recording, I like to listen back to it myself and do as much as I possibly can because, number one, I like to give a more stable product to whoever I'm outsourcing to, whether if it's for proofing or editing or whatever it might be. I always like to have as solid of a product already done. And that's why I do an initial proofing. I don't leave it to just myself, but if I can get pickups recorded that are in the same session as when the initial recording was done, it's going to sound a lot more seamless because I've done this to myself. I've done this myself, but I don't like and maybe this is just because I know what I'm listening for when I listen to audiobooks, but have you ever listened to an audiobook where just one sentence sounded so much different? And that's usually because it was a pickup. And if I can record that pickup in the original session, it won't sound as different. And so that's the reason I do a first set of pickups. So what I'll do, and I'll just walk through this with you guys, is just all the different tracks that I'm going to need. Real quick, in case you guys want to know, if you zoom in, the way the mouse wheel works in the multitrack editor is the mouse wheel, if you're in this area, scrolls up and down. So let me zoom in here. It scrolls up and down the tracks that you have. Okay? If you zoom in and out, if you mouse wheel up and down over here, it zooms in and out of the actual tracks themselves. So if I want to zoom in on track 1, I'm going to put my mouse here. I'm going to zoom in and scroll up over here and zoom back in again over here. And now I'm going to scroll up. And now I have a really nice zoomed in view of track 1. And if I want to zoom in on time, I'll mouse wheel up here. And I'll mouse wheel down up here. This is how you zoom in and out of time, is up here on the, I don't even know what you would call this. The track view? Whatever. You zoom in and out up here to zoom in on time. So now I have a really good view of what's going on in track 1, so which is my raw punch and roll here, and I can see everything that's going on. The reason why it's gray is because I've muted the track, and I'll explain why you would mute and unmute, and I'll explain that a little bit down the road. So I'm going to unmute it, and now I can I'll hit the T button, or you can do the same thing right up here, the time selection tool. I like using the hotkeys; they're so much faster, and I can put my time selection here and listen. I just hit space. So, if you wanted to grab a certain selection of time in a recording clip, you can do that with the time selection tool here. However, if you want to use the move tool, which is V, it will allow, oh, hold on just a second. There we go. The move tool will allow you to grab entire clips or entire recording, entire tracks here. Because yes, this entire thing right here is, oh, there we go. Sorry. This entire thing right here is one track, but it's made up of multiple different clips, multiple different individual tracks. And if you double click, it'll open up that track in the waveform editor, and you can go back into multitrack. But there's different ways to grab tracks and move them around, because in the time selection tool, I can only grab what's in a certain period of time. I can't really move anything. But if I grab the move tool, I can grab a track and drag it wherever I want. I'm just going to hit Control Z there because I don't want that. I want that exactly where it was. So that's how you kind of can move individual clips around and, you know, change where a clip ends and begins. So if I come over here, well, actually, no, you can do this with the T tool as well. but I'm going to go ahead and grab right here at the end of this clip, and I can move it wherever I want, right? This is one of the really nice benefits of having individual tracks is everything in this environment is non-destructive. So I can delete this track from, I could just select this and delete it, and it's not deleted from the file system. If I were to go into the actual file system, I would still see the track that I deleted. It's just not in the session anymore. And that's one of the beautiful things about a non-destructive environment is it's the ultimate playground. It's so cool that you can do that. And the other really cool thing is if you duplicate the track, it doesn't duplicate it on your file system. It only duplicates it in the session. And I'll show you what I mean. And I'll use the room tone specifically to do this. So let me zoom in here on my room tone a little bit. So I have roughly 20-ish seconds of room tone. And if I wanted to, I'm going to make sure I don't have anything selected here. I'm in my move tool. I'm going to click the track. I'm going to hit Control-C. I'm going to hit the time tool and put it right here. And I'm going to hit Control-V. And what that does is it creates another instance of this particular file without duplicating it in the file system. This track 3_003, it only exists in one place on my computer, but it exists twice in the multitrack editor. That also means, just be aware of this, if I make a change in one of them, it's going to make a change in the other, since they're both pointing to the same WAV file on my computer. But the nice thing is it's less memory that's being used. And I'll show you how that's really beneficial in a little bit. So that's the cool thing about, one of the cool things about multitrack editor. There's many cool things about the multitrack editor. And by the way, if you guys have any questions or anything, feel free to ask. Don't worry. Don't hesitate on anything. Just go ahead and ask, and I'll answer it as soon as I can. If I'm in the middle of a thought, I'll finish it up and I'll come back and answer your question. All right. So I will have been in the booth, recorded everything, recorded my pickups, recorded my room tone. After those 3 tracks, there's a few other things that I need. And I need to bring this up. Give me just a moment here. There. Okay. I had a template of what I wanted to get at and show you guys here. So the next thing I want to do is I need space for when I edit. So I'm going to create an edit track. Okay. And this edit track, oops, keep running into issues with this. Come on. There we go. So this edit track is where I'm going to do my sound balancing, my declicker, all sorts of different stuff. And I'm going to show you why this is so awesome in the multi-track form in just a minute. But there are a few other steps that I'm going to need. On top of the edit track, I'm also going to need a separate track for my second set of pickups from whoever I'm using as my proofer. So I'm going to call that pickups 2. So I have 2 sets of pickups here. These are the ones that I catch in the initial recording. These are the ones that I catch, that I don't catch, but that someone else does. And then after that, we have our editing, and then we're going to have our final mastering, okay? And I'm going to call this mastering, not master, because master is a default track on every multi-track editing session. You can't, if you do get rid of this, it's not going to work anymore, because this is where everything, how do I explain this? All the final audio is routed through. If you mute the master track and do a mixdown, your mixdown will be completely silent. This track can never be unmuted if you're wanting to use mixdowns and stuff like that. I find it best to just leave this track alone. That's just kind of the way it is for me. Leave the track alone and just let it do its thing. Use the other tracks for what you need need. So, how do I do this? Well, I have my raw recording. I have my pickup's recorded, and when I record the pickup, I cut out the old piece, and then I copy this piece. I copy the pickup and paste it back into where it was up here. After that's done, I can then take this raw punch and roll recording, and I can mix it down. And what a mix down is it takes everything that is currently not muted, and it combines it. It stitches it all into one file. So you'll see here I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. You get the picture. I have a lot of individual WAV files that made up the raw punch and roll recording. In this case, when I'm editing, I only want one. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to make sure that I have just this track unmuted. So this one's muted, and I see all the green buttons saying all the other tracks are muted. I'm going to right-click, and I'm going to mix down session to new file, and then click entire session. You can also do this in, is it multitrack? Mix down session to new file. You can do it at either place. They're the exact same menu options. So I'm going to mix down session to new file, entire session. It's going to take just a moment, and here we go. This is fantastic. But, I mean, there's a lot of really hot stuff. My signal is really hot here, and I have a lot of editing to do. But I was able to mix this all down to a WAV file, so that's all good and whatnot. However, there's something else I need to take care of, just an initial tweak that I need to take care of, and I'm glad that I had this in the recording so I can show you guys. I have some clipping going on here and here. Sorry, right here. The reason why is because my character voice in this particular point, he's a very loud, booming, almost Grizzly Adams in a way. He's a really loud, booming Western voice. And so I have clipping. What the heck was that? So if I play this, see? So I need to take care of this. But this is one of the really nice benefits of the multi-track editor, is I can just come in here real quick. I can find those two timestamps. Oh, and I realized I forgot that I need amplitude statistics. I accidentally closed down this window last time. I need to fix it up again. Effects rack. Files. There's a few others. What am I missing? I got amplitude statistics, right? Yeah. I have files. I have effects. Favorites. I actually do think I had match loudness in there. And I think that was it for right now. I'll just leave it at that for the moment. So I'm going to, using the files window here, I'm going to go back to my mix down, and I'm going to find that timestamp. So the first one is at 48 and a half seconds, and the other one is at about 1:10. So let's go back to the first one, 49 and a half seconds. So we're going to go back into the session. 49 and a half seconds is here. This is the piece, this is the signal that when I mixed it down, it clipped. The cool thing about Audition, though, is you didn't hear any distortion. And that's because Adobe Audition allows you to go above 0 dB in this editor. It doesn't change. So if I were to mix this down and export it as an MP3, you would hear the distortion because it clipped. But in Adobe Audition, the way that it works is it doesn't actually have that. How do I explain this? The clipping sound, that distortion, doesn't come across because Adobe Audition does allow you to go above 0 dB. However, in the final mastering and stuff, I don't want that. So I'm going to take this real quick. I'm going to do just a really quick and dirty editing here, just to get rid of the clipping. And so right at this particular spot, I'm going to put a little point here. Okay. Maybe right about there. a little volume point. I'm going to do one right at the end of it as well. I'm going to put one in the middle, and I'm going to drag it down. So I'm going to reduce this signal. I think 8 dB, maybe even too much. Let's do 6. 6.1, that's fine. And then we need to do the same thing here. It was this particular signal, so we're going to do that, and we're just going to drop it down. I'm going to put 2 points here. There. Now I'm going to give them a quick listen to make sure nothing sounds overtly awful. Good. And let's listen to this. Okay, that was audibly way more quiet. I could totally hear that. Listen to this again. You see how so much more quiet that was? Obviously, 8 decibels was way too low. So let's change this to maybe 2.9-ish. We'll try again. That's better. It's still a little bit more quiet, but only if you're really listening for it and know what you're listening for. So that's good. Now, when I remix this down, I shouldn't have any clipping, and we'll just confirm that here in a second. So I'm going to right-click, and I'm going to close this selected file, which is the one, just this one. I don't want to close anything else. I just want to close the mix down. So close selected files. Don't save it. And now I'm going to move this off the screen here. And now I'm going to right-click, mix down session, new file, entire session. And now we have no clipping. That's really nice. Oh, right. That's right. I turned that one on. I don't want match loudness, actually. Let's turn that off. And I can turn off spectral view for the time being. Another way of checking to make sure and to make positive that you don't have, to be sure that you don't have any clipping is you can just come over to amplitude statistics and hit scan in your peak amplitude. As long as it's below 0, you're good. So I have a few places that are close, but that's okay. All right. Did I close the window down again? I did. I am so, that is my Achilles heel. I don't know why, but I am so bad at closing this window when I don't want to. I don't know why. It's just the way I guess it is. Match loudness. No, I don't want match loudness. I want effects rack and favorites. All right. I'll try and make sure that I don't close that window down again. Anyway, let's go back to our session here. And once again, I did that by just double-clicking the session file here. And now I have this mix down. This is good. What I'm going to do is, I'm actually going to go back to the mix down real quick, and I'm going to save this. I like this. I want to work with this file. I want to edit it. So Control-S to save it. The way I kind of do my versioning is for every chapter in the book, I have the same named files. I use the file system to determine which chapter I'm in. So what I'll do is I'm going to change this to raw PNR mixdown. And I'm going to put this in learning, presentations, my process, presentation itself. Right here. I'm going to put it in this file. In this folder. And this is my raw PNR mixdown, my raw punch and roll mixdown. I'm going to save it. And right now, I just want to keep it as just exactly how I recorded it. So waveform, 48K, 32-bit. Some people record at 16, 24. I personally record at 32 because file space really isn't the most critical thing to me. So I'm just going to leave it at that. And now I'm going to come back into the multi-track session, zoom out a bit, and I'm going to put my raw punch and roll mix down in the edit track. So now what this track here represents is a mix down of this, which has my my pickup. So I've recorded the pickup, I've copied it up here, got everything spliced in how I want it to go, and now I have my edit track ready to go. So at this point, I can mute the raw punch and roll. I don't need it anymore. So I'm going to go ahead and mute that. I'm going to leave the room tone muted as well because I never need to listen to that. I just need to pull it in every now and then. So now I can start my editing. So I'm going to zoom in here on the edit, zoom in on the actual track itself, and zoom in on time a little bit as well. And now I can start getting around to editing. I'm going to unmute it. Am I in MME or am I in ASIO? I'm in ASIO, so you guys won't be able to hear this. Wish I had remembered that. So let's go over to MME. I'm going to make sure that I can see you guys hearing this.
What raw?
Okay, good. So, the ACX file specifications. Anywhere between a half second to 1 second of room tone at the beginning of the file. Anywhere between 2 to 5 seconds of room tone at the end. And then no overt room tone or background sounds throughout the recording. In layman's terms, it's a little bit more specific and technical than that, but in layman's terms, that's what it is. So obviously, I have way too much time here before I say chapter 4. I don't say this until almost 7 seconds in. So what I'm going to do is I'm using the time selection tool here. I'm going to highlight this section of time, and I'm going to hit delete. I'm not going to hit backspace. I mean, I guess I could. All right, either one is fine. Backspace, delete is fine, but I typically like using delete because that's exactly what I'm doing. However, I'm not doing, is it control delete or is it shift delete? Which one was it? There's one of the deletes that will actually delete the piece of time, delete what you have selected and then bring the clip over. And I thought it was control, maybe it's shift backspace. Alt backspace. So Alt backspace takes the period of time that you have selected, it deletes it, and then shifts everything over after it. It shifts it all over that period of time that you just deleted. I don't want that here. I just want to delete the period of time. That's all I want. And then I want to delete this period of time because I don't exactly know how much time this was. Zoom in a little bit here to make sure I don't kill any of the word. The cool thing is I can use these little handles to finish my final adjustments. There we go. And I'm doing this for a very specific reason, and I'm going to come here to the end of the file, so way over here, and drag this all the way over here. And I don't have to do any deleting or anything. I can just grab the tail end of it and just drag it over. So that's another way of doing that as well.
You told me all you seen and heard morning before last.
Cool. All right. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to use my room tone. This track is very important. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take this room tone and I'm going to copy it here. So once again, the way I did this is I hit V, selected the clip, hit Control C, hit T, selected where I wanted to paste it, and then hit Control V. The reason you need to hit T and go back to the time selection tool is because you want to specifically tell it where to start pasting this track in. Because if the time selection tool was, say, way over here, and I didn't click over here, when I hit Control V, watch this, it pasted it right here. You see that? It's pasting it where the time selection tool is. So be aware that when you paste something, it's based on which track is selected and where in time the bar is. So that's why I hit T again and I paste it here. In this case, I want this particular section of room tone to be 3 seconds. Because what I do, the way I upload everything is at the beginning of the file, I do 3/4 second room tone at the beginning and 3 seconds of trailing room tone at the end. I did that with my most previous series, and it worked absolutely fantastic. I never got any kickback or anything like that from ACX. So what I'm going to do is, to make sure that I have this correctly and exactly at 3 seconds, is I'm going to hit Edit. I'm going to go to Snapping, and I'm going to turn it on. Or you can just hit the key S. And now snapping is turned on. So when I move this around, you'll see that the clip will snap based off of this blue bar that's showing up every now and then. It's going to snap to a certain timestamp. Okay? So here, the ending is snapping to 55 seconds, and here, the beginning is snapping to 30. So I'm going to take the 30. I do think I recall there being a little bump in the lower time here. So I'm going to just bring this up to maybe 35. So, at the I think at the beginning of my room tone, I had like this really weird bump, and I need to re-record the room tone. So I want 3 seconds. So I have this starting at 35, and I need it to end at 38. However, it's only snapping to 40, 42 and a half, 45. It's not snapping to anything at around 3. So what I need to do, I need to come down. There's 2 things I can do, and that I'm going to do both of them. Number 1, I'm going to come down to Edit, and I'm going to do Snapping, Snap to Ruler Fine. This allows me to have more stop points. So now you'll see that stopping at 1, 2, 3, 4. The other thing that I could do is I could also just zoom in even more on the track. And now my increments are even more than just 1 second. They're every half second. You see that? So that's cool. At this point, I am guaranteed that this particular piece of the room tone is guaranteed to be 3 seconds, no matter what. Every time I grab this particular clip and I copy and paste it, it's always going to be half a second. I also now need one that is 3/4 of a second. So, once again, I'm going to grab it. I'm going to copy it, put the time selection tool here, I'm going to paste it. And now I'm going to zoom. Well, first off, I'm going to get to start at 40 seconds using the snapping. I'm going to zoom in, and I'm going to drag this. I'm going to try and get it as close to 3/4 of a second as I can. So this is right here. This is half a second. This is 0.7. 0.75 is right here in between these 2 ticks. So I'm going to drag it over. So I have one there. I have one here. I'm going to just drag it to right at about 3/4 of a second. And that's pretty good to me. It's just a fraction of a second over 3/4. And by fraction, I mean like 1,000th of a second. So, that's good. Now what I can do is I'm going to hit V, make sure I'm in the Move tool. I'm going to select the beginning of the clip. I'm going to select the 3/4 second clip. I'm going to copy it. I'm going to come down here to the beginning of the track, and I'm going to paste it. Now I have the very beginning room tone right as much as I need it to be. I'm going to grab my 3 second room tone, and I'm going to paste it here after my chapter heading. Don't worry about the crossfade right now, and at the end. If you have any breaks in your chapter, which I do know I have in this one, I just don't know exactly where it is. I think it's this piece right here. And I think there are 2 breaks. I think it's here and here. Obviously, I would have my script going. Right now, I'd have my script with me. I'd be looking at it, flipping through the pages, finding the breaks, finding out where they're at in the text, and put that 3 second break in there. Some people like 2.5 seconds. Since I don't have any other extra sound to denote a scene change, I like having just an extra half a second to a second to let the listener realize that we're changing scenes. So I'm back at the beginning here now. What I'm going to do, I can do two things. I can either hit V and then grab this and just drag it to the left, or I can do what we call a ripple delete gap. And what that does is it gets rid of the white space in between. So you have to right click the space in between clips in order for this to work, but it deletes that gap and space in where you clicked. So you would hit right click, ripple delete, selected gap. I usually have this bound to Control Alt Shift backspace to where I could just put the time selection here, hit Control Alt Shift backspace, and it would kill it. Just like that. I don't want to do that just yet, though, because I want to fix this crossfade that shouldn't be existing. This crossfade shouldn't be here. So what I'm going to do, I have to zoom in really fine here because I clipped the ends of these tracks really close. So I'm going to just kind of extend it out just a bit. I'm going to grab this track and I'm going to do just a hint of a crossfade. That way there's no like hard cutoffs. Crossfades are your friend. Now what I'm going to do, this is going to sound a little janky, okay? But it works really nice in order to be able to get this crossfade the way you want it. I'm going to extend this a bit. Actually, no, that's actually going to be perfect. I still want this particular piece right here, this piece of time. I still want it to be 3 seconds. But I also want there to be a crossfade. And if I... let me show you what I could do. If I put my time selection tool here and I get rid of the gap and then I grab this particular piece here and I drag it over, I do have a crossfade, but now this is less than 3 seconds. On top of that, when I did that, it didn't grab the end of this track either. Wait, sorry, I'm in my editing track, so actually that's not an issue. So forget the last thing that I just said. Either way, what's going on? Control Z. There we go. If I had breaks in this track for some reason, it wouldn't grab the second track beyond the one that I just selected. It would grab just the one. And so any crossfades that I had set up after this would be removed and deleted. So let me show you what I mean. I'm going to put my timestamp here. I'm going to hit Control K, and that's going to put a cut. And say I did that because I just needed there to be a crossfade in between these two pieces of audio for some reason. I don't know why, but just say that's what the case was. I have this piece right here to be 3 seconds. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to put this here, Control Alt Shift backspace, and now I'm going to grab this and I'm going to create a crossfade. Watch what it does to this crossfade over here. It's gone. It doesn't exist. That's what I don't want. So to fix this, watch what I do. Let's pretend that I still have that crossfade for some reason. I'm going to put my time here. I'm going to ripple delete the gap. So Control Alt Shift backspace for me. Or once again, just right click, ripple delete gap. But before I do that, I'm going to extend this 3 second room tone just a little bit, but I don't want snapping to mess with the timing on it. So I'm going to hit S to turn snapping off. I'm now going to shrink that room tone just a bit. I'm going to delete the gap, and now I'm going to have it regrow that 3 seconds. You see what I did there? Because I did that, and I adjusted the tail end of this instead of the beginning of this, I adjusted the room tone clip's position as opposed to the recorded audio clip. I didn't screw up this crossfade over here like I did beforehand. So that's why what I like to do is shrink this a bit, not a lot, get rid of the gap, and then regrow it as much as I had just shrunk it. Just a little bit. That way I still get the crossfade, but because I'm moving this, because I'm changing this one and not, because I'm changing this clip and not this clip, I don't screw up the crossfade I had already put in place. And that's the big thing there. So, that's fun. So that's how you can get these all kind of blended up very nicely. Or if you really don't care about having the hard cutoffs, you can just Control-Shift Backspace. Put that here, Control-Shift Backspace. Put the time selection tool there, Control-Shift Backspace. Done. Now you have hard cutoffs, but it's also, I don't know. It may be a problem to you. It may not. I'll leave that up to you to decide. But you could just do that too. I'm not a huge fan of that, but that's me. I like having crossfades. So anyway, let's get to effects on the different tracks. I don't want my effects rack on my editing track to be the same as the effects rack on my mastering. And that's inherently built in. You don't have to worry about doing anything. I'll just go ahead and give you a little example. Let's mute edit for now. We'll put our selector in on the, the room tone track. I'm going to bring my effects rack over here so you guys can see what I'm talking about. Let's just say, I don't know. Hell, let's just do the edit track. Let's say in editing I wanted to, let's put in my noise declicker, my mouth declicker. So VST3, restoration, isotope, RX7 mouth declick. Cool. So now I have the mouth declicker that's going to run when I mix down. That's very important to understand this. When you mix down, that's when your effects rack gets put into place. So if I were to mix down, the mix down would be completely silenced because all the tracks are muted. But if I unmute the edit track and I have my mouth declick, let's just put this.
Chapter 4. What rotten slush is this? Bug roared. Where I'm going ain't no place for him.
Cool, right? The mouth declick is being applied to just this track. So if for some reason I had another track running in sequence with it, say for instance you wanted to gate your room tone and then remix it back in. I actually have done that before. It was a really weird circumstance, but I noise gated my room tone, but then I remixed the room tone back in. And I had to do that because the way that the exciter worked in, not Neutron, Ozone. I forgot what the app was called. In Ozone, because the way that the exciter worked in Ozone, it was taking my room tone and just making it insanely, really loud. And so I had to gate the room tone before I mastered. And then after the mastering was done, I had to remix the room tone back in. It was really annoying, but I had to do it. So, why was I saying that? I was getting somewhere with this, and I don't remember why. Oh, right. That could all be done on the mastering track, but editing is just going to be the mouth declick, and that's it. Because I don't want to gate the edit. I don't want to do any noise gating here. Everything's a little bit quiet to begin with. There's no reason to do that noise gating. So I just want my editing for right now to be the mouth declick. Maybe if I was really close to the mic at certain points, I may want to run the deplosive, in which case I could do that too. But the important thing to remember is those effects will only be on that track. My throat's getting a little dry. Hold on. Oh, there we go. So that's why I use the effects rack in editing as differently as I do in mastering. So let's say I'm getting ready to master. So I have my effects done. I have my say I'm done. I'm done editing. Okay. I know I haven't really done a whole lot, but let's just say, for instance, I am done. I've gone in through all the clips. I've gone into here. I've done my editing. Anything spectral wise I've wanted to do. Wow, look at that.
Slush is this.
Listen to that.
Slush is.
Oh, that is awful. Let's say I had fixed that, though. I'm going to come in here. I'm going to do all my healing. I know this is probably making it sound really weird.
Slush is this.
It's actually not as bad.
Slush is.
It sounds a little bit...
Slush is.
Anyway, let's just, for argument's sake, let's just say I'm done. I'm done with my editing. I'm ready to go. So I'm going to right-click. I'm going to mix down the session to new file, entire session. Once again, mute the tracks you don't want. So now when I edit it, this is going to take a little bit more because now it's running the declicker on this track. So it's going to take just a couple minutes. Thankfully, it doesn't take anything more than that. There was one time I had a 20-minute file, and the mastering took... How long did it take my mastering chain to run? 35, 40 minutes? Something like that. I don't fully remember exactly how long it took. It took a while for it to run, though. It was pretty crazy how long it took for that mastering chain to run. I was doing a lot on it, though. I had Ozone, I had Neutron, I had... one of my analytics tools. What else did I have running on it? Boy, I had a lot running on that chain. I have since turned a lot of those things off because it takes so much time to run the mix down. It's insane. Don't get me wrong, the plugins are very nice to have. They are very, very nice to have. But when you're mixing down a session, it can take a little bit, as evidenced by this one. All I'm doing is I'm running a mouth declick. However, I will say the mouth declicker does take its toll on the processing on this. It's not a small, simple option to run that one tool, as evidenced by this. It's about a 17.5-minute chapter, and it took about 3 minutes for that one plugin to work on the mixdown. So, all right. Everything... where am I at? Oh my gosh, I did it again. I am so bad at that. Why do I keep closing this window? Sorry. So let's go back to my mixdown that I just did. And we'll zoom out. Want to make sure that there aren't any too high peaks. Want to make sure I don't have any clipping. Yeah, that looks good. And in this case, I would have done a lot of these lines with a character who speaks really loud. I would have brought them down. I would have done some sound leveling between all those different clips and whatnot. So just understand that that's something you would do in the editing phase. Okay, cool. So I have my edit mix down done. So I'm going to come back to the session. Actually, first off, I'm going to save this. At this point, before I actually would have done this mix down, I need to come back here real quick. I keep switching in between these two. Before I had done this mix down, I would have also recorded any pickups that my proofer would have caught. I would have recorded them into pickups too. So I would have grabbed this track up, brought it up here, recorded my pickups into it, and then I would have copied them into this edit track. Then I would have done the mix down. So let's just say, for instance, I had no pickups. All the pickups that I caught up here were all the pickups that needed to be done. Haha, right? I caught all my own pickups. Don't ever think that you're going to catch all your pickups. Use a proofer, okay? That's a very important thing to do. What was I going to say now? Right. So make sure that your pickups that your proofer has that your proofer picks up. Make sure you record them and then put them into this track, then mix down. After that mix down, I'm now ready for mastering. So what I'll call this mix down that I just made, I'm going to consider this my proofed mix down. So when I save this, I'm going to call that proofed mix down. I'm going to save it in the same folder as my raw PNR mix down. Cool. And now I'm going to bring my proofed mix down into my mastering track. And this makes sense to me. I'm editing the raw PNR mix down and I'm mastering the proofed mix down. That makes a lot of sense to me. Just logically, that flow, it works. So I'm going to mute this track now because I'm done with my editing and my pickups. And I'm ready to master. And guess what? My effects rack has nothing on it. There's nothing here. If I were to click the edit, there's my mouth declick. If I come back up to mastering, there we go. I'll show you what my old mastering stack looked like. Apparently I won't. Apparently somehow my mastering stack never got imported into Audition 2020. It must still be in 2019. Or did I delete it? I may have deleted it because I knew I was going to change it. Okay, cool. So let's create a new mastering stack. Let's come in over here and mastering isotope ozone 9. It'll take a moment. Okay. All right, so now ozone 9 is brought in. I'm going to need neutron for my mix. So I believe that's EQ. Yeah, neutron 3. Boy, that is unfortunate. Somehow all my presets got deleted. I'm going to have to find my mastering chain and bring those presets back. Because it had all the stuff. It had everything I wanted. Boy. Okay, whatever. I want my mix to run before my final sound balancing, my final sound leveling in ozone. So I'm going to bring neutron above ozone. The way that it processes the stack is it does top down. So the first thing that you do, the first item in here is the first thing it does. So it'll run neutron 3, then it will run ozone. Yeah, I really got to get that back because I had the maximizer I had that dialed in so well, and now it's not there anymore. Oh, that is unfortunate for me. I wonder how that happened. That is... Oh, I don't want to do that again. I worked with the sound engineer to help me dial that all in, and now I don't want to do that again. Anyway, it's probably still in 2019. I just need to bring those preferences over. Okay, so beyond neutron and ozone, maybe we want to run our own EQ on it. We totally could. So filter and EQ, parametric EQ. We could do our sweeping, find out the offensive range frequencies and get rid of them. If you don't know what sweeping is, it's a very important technique that I learned via Bill DeWeese had a thing running called Tech Tuesday. And I know some people don't like him. It's a very how do I say this? He can be a very controversial subject from time to time for some people. Personally, I really liked his Tech Tuesday series because his son, who is a sound engineer, did show us a lot of things that you can do. And with a parametric EQ, what you do is, say you take this stop here and you bring it all the way up. I'm going to take my 3 stop, which is this one, and I'm going to, I don't want to do that one. I want to do this. I'm going to raise the width up as high as I can. I'm going to change it to about 100. And what this does is it allows me to be able to move this in and out, and I can sweep. And this is exactly what I'm doing, is I'm kind of going back and forth. And when I hear a frequency that just sounds completely garbled and awful, I can take that frequency and just bring it down. And it removes that, quote unquote, removes. You don't want to ever fully remove a frequency, but you can bring it down a little bit. And that helps remove some of the offensive frequencies that were caught in your voice. But anyway, we could do an EQ, and so maybe I'll want that to be after neutron and before ozone. Anyway, this is nice because you separate your editing stack from your master stack, but it's all in one session. You don't have to go in between different things in order to see them. You just click the different tracks, and there you go. You don't have to worry about anything else. And now I could listen to this and see what it sounds like. I don't think I'm really doing much at the moment. These are all on, even the gate's on. But let's listen to this, see what it sounds like.
Chapter 4.
Ooh.
What rotten slush is this? Bug.
I would definitely want to run a de-esser. Listen to the word slush.
What rotten slush is this?
Oh, that is offensive. So, I'd probably put the de-essing, I'd probably put it on my editing. I may put it on my mastering stack, but I'd probably have it on my editing at least as well. I may even have it on both and run it very lightly on one and more heavily on the other. But the cool thing is having it this way allows you to kind of play around with things. Because it's not the most horrible thing to remix down a file. You wait for a couple minutes for the mix down to run and try doing it a different way. Because once your edit is done, then you can play around with how that with how everything looks and how everything sounds. Because your editing is complete, you don't have to touch that anymore. And now you can mess with the rest of the stack. Because there's the manual side of editing, which is where you're going into spectral view, you're removing offensive sounds and stuff like that. But then you also have your stack of plugins that you're running against it as well. Once the manual part is done, then you can just play around with the automated part and find out what sounds best. And when I say that, I definitely mean with an audio engineer. I cannot stress that enough. Work with an audio engineer to get the best sounding product. Because if you don't, there's going to be something that you miss. The engineer I worked with, Sarah, she's absolutely fantastic. I loved working with her. It was like a $50 consultation fee, and she spent a half an hour to an hour getting my mastering chain set up. It was so nice. So incredibly nice. And number one, I can't thank her enough for the time that she spent to make that happen. But number two, my mastered audio sounded fantastic. Obviously, this doesn't sound right because this is not my mastering chain. This is just a default mastering chain. So you got to make sure that you work with an audio engineer who will help you get your audio to work with your voice, with your mastering chain to work with your audio that you recorded with your voice. All right. there is so much you can do. Sorry, just a second. I accidentally minimized my Streamlabs so I couldn't see any messages coming through. Let's close these down. Ah, I did it again. Oh my gosh, I think that's 4 times now. No, not essential sound. Wanted effects rack. Favorites, files, amplitude statistics. Whatever. All right. There needs to be a minimize on an undocked window in Audition. Oh, I just did it again. Why am I so notorious at that? That is so annoying. Do not close it. Move it. Oh, sorry. Okay. So with my effects rack in place, and let's just, for argument's sake, let's say I have my mastering set up exactly how I wanted it to. I've done some listening, spot checking, and whatnot here and there throughout the proofed mix down that is going to become the mastered. And say it's all ready and good to go. Sweet. Awesome. When I'm done, I can now do a final mix down for the mastering chain to officially run, because just so you know, until you mix down, everything is only in this session. Like, I can't export the proofed mix down and have it sound like it's the mastered final version. That's not the way it works. Your effects rack gets applied at mixdown. So I know this would take a little bit because there's the parametric EQ, neutron, and ozone. And I don't want to deal with waiting for that right now, especially in the middle of this presentation. So I'm going to get rid of them, okay? Well, actually, I may be able to just turn them off and may run just as fast. Let's see. So I turn them off. Everything else is muted. Mixdown session. How long does it take? Okay, I'm not going to wait for that long. Let's just kill everything in these. Remove selected effects. Yeah, whatever. Okay. So for argument's sake, let's just say that everything is all the effects rack stuff is ready to go for my mastering. I'm going to right click, mix down session, entire session. Voila. When this Really? There we go. Ha! All right. Our mastering chain worked and everything is good to go. This mix down here that we're seeing, this would be the final mix down. It would be your final mastered version. So obviously it's not, because for time purposes I removed all those. But we're ready to go. We're going to save this. So I'm going to save this as mastered mixdown. And it's going to be in here. Cool. And now what I can do is, with my mastered mixdown, I can now hit Control-Shift-E. Or if you want to know where that is, edit. Sorry, not edit. File. Export. File. But I'm a huge fan of hotkeys, so Control-Shift-E. And now, when I export, I want to export to 44.1K and 16-bit, because that is what ACX expects. And now, I'm going to change the name of this, and I'm going to call this Final. No, we're just going to call it Chapter 4, because we already know it's final. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to come back here to learning, presentations, my process, And so, technically speaking, I would have all my different chapters in here. So I would have my chapter 4 session, my chapter 5, chapter 6, 7, 8, whatever. I'd have all the chapters in the book as different folders in this main master folder. This master folder would obviously be the audiobook itself. In my case, Tales of the New World Book 1. When I do this, I'm also going to have a folder called Uploads. I don't have this folder in here because this is just a working folder for this presentation. But I would have an Uploads folder, and in it, I would save my chapter 4, MP3. And inside this folder would eventually be chapter 1 through the end of the book, any prologues, any epilogues, and my opening and closing credits. And if it, for some reason, is a box set, it would be the box set credits as well. And this brings up the final question of how can I use this again? If I finally have everything ready to go, I have all the tracks that I'm going to eventually use, my raw P&R, my 2 pickup tracks, my room tone, my edit, and my mastering. I don't want to reset this up every single time. No one wants to do that. That's a complete waste of time. So what I can do is I'm going to go ahead and throw that mouth declicker back in here real quick. Mouth declick. There. Okay. So my mastering track has these, and my edit track. Oh, I had that on the wrong track. Let's get rid of that. Let's put it on the right one. Edit. Restoration. Mouth declick. Cool. So my editing has my declicker, and my mastering has neutron, my EQ, and ozone. That's fantastic. But I don't want to have to reset this up every time, including the presets. So what I'm going to do, I'm not going to exit that. Oh, you have no idea how close I got to doing that. I'm going to hit File, Export, Session as Template. And what this does is it takes this entire session and it takes a copy of it. And whenever I start a new session, I can grab this particular template and it will load it up with it. But the thing is I don't want it to load all the clips too. So you're going to need a moment of bravery. I'm going to hit Control A, and that selects everything. And I'm going to kill it. Or not. Control A, delete. Apparently I didn't hit delete. Everything's gone. I'm going to mute this last track. I'm now going to hit File, Export, Session as Template. And I'm going to call this Audiobook. My audiobook template. It doesn't need to be anything more than that. I am going to include my markers and other metadata. Oh, there's one more thing I need to do before I do that. I need to hit the home button. That way, my playhead. That's what I was looking for earlier. Playhead is at the beginning of the file. So everything is in order. Everything is muted. My playhead's at the beginning, and all my plugins are where they need to be. File, Export, Session as Template, Audiobook. And now I'm going to hit Control Z, and everything's back. And then I'm going to save it like hell. I'm going to hit Control S like 50,000 times. You should watch me on stream sometime. I'm constantly refreshing, resaving after, 30 minutes of work. So now when I hit Control N, because I want to record chapter 5, I can come down here and my template and grab audiobook. And it's at the same sample rate as the previous one, 48K. 32-bit depth mono. I'm going to browse where I want it to go, and then I'm going to call it, next chapter would be chapter 5. Just like that. So as a matter of fact, I'm going to new world, select folder, chapter 5. That looks good. Okay. And since I made the session template with no files in there, with no recordings, we're left with just the actual working session. No content in it, but the layout is correct. And if I come in over here and I click edit, there's my mouth declick. If I click mastering, there's my mastering chain. So now all that's left to do is start recording. And that way, I don't have to reset up the session every single time. And all my work for the chapter is in one place. Now, I understand that some people may be loath to keeping all their work in one place. What happens if the session gets corrupted, the session file itself? Well, I will say that does happen. It has happened to me, but it's only happened once. And even then, I was able to save it because the way that my system was working was actually saving backups of the sessions before. And the reason why that happened, it hasn't happened in a while, but whenever I turn off my Scarlett, I have an 18i8. Whenever I turn that off when the computer's running, sometimes it will cause a blue screen of death. And that caused the session to get corrupted. So the answer for that is simple. I turn off the computer, then I turn off the Scarlett. It's nothing more, nothing less than that. And it hasn't happened. I haven't had the blue screen of death at all. And that's the only time the session file ever got corrupted. The only time. The thing is even if the session file gets corrupted, all your recordings, all those WAV files are still there because let's go over here to where that was. Learning presentations, this one, chapter 4. Sorry, presentation. Oh. When you're doing the punch and roll, those files are all in chapter 4 recorded. It's the session name, and then you append _recorded. That's what it does that's what Adobe Audition does behind the scenes, is it appends _recorded to the end of the name. It creates a folder in there, and whenever you're doing punch and roll, it puts it all in there. If you have to import any files, it brings them in here. So anyway, imported files would be like if you're recording your credits and you need to bring in, say your author had a theme written for the audiobook, a theme song. That's something that you would have as an imported file. So, oh, and one more thing. If you do need to do like what I did with gating the room tone and then remixing back in, what you can do is don't hit the X button. Come in here, multitrack, tracks, add mono track, and you just call this background to be as generic as possible, because your background could possibly be a theme song. It could be the room tone, whatever. You would bring the room tone file, you would copy it down here. As a matter of fact, I'm going to show you how you would do this in the chapter 4 session. No, I don't want to save that right now. So in the presentation, we're going to go to chapter 4. Tracks, multitrack, add mono track. And I would drag this to the bottom. I would call this background. And this is where you would not mute this track when you're doing the final mix down. It would be muted any other time. But these two tracks would be either muted or unmuted together. Tracks that are pretty much constantly muted would be room tone and pickups after you actually record the pickup and get it spliced in. Oh, I should show you how to splice in a pickup as well. That's kind of important. I'll show you that in a second. So I would take my room tone, just whoa. Cancel. Let's grab just that one clip. I'm going to right-click, drag it, and then copy here. I'm going to right-click it and hit loop. And then I can just extend it out indefinitely. And if I turn snapping on, it will snap to the end of another clip on another track. So it'll snap at seconds, as you can see up there at the top on the ruler. Or it'll also snap to ends of tracks, like right here. It's snapping to the end of that raw P&R track. So then I would just snap it to there. And now, if I were to gate the room tone on the mastering track, I would be remixing the room tone back in on the background. And so in order for that to happen, you would just right-click and mix down session. And then what it would do is it would take this track and mix it in with that. So let's do the splicing in of the pickup real quick. Let's just come over here. That one looks good. I think it was just... No, it's not that one. I think it's this one. Let's just, for instance, say I want to splice this pickup in over here. Let's move it over to where we haven't done anything with it yet. So say, for instance, this pickup that you just recorded right here is what's supposed to replace this section of audio. We're going to zoom in on the tracks. Maybe not that much. There we go. What I'm going to do is I'm going to come in. I'm going to leave a little bit of room tone. I got to turn off snapping. Snapping is nice, but when you're trying to get precision clicks, it is not very nice. I'm going to put it right there. Now I'm going to hit Control K. That puts a split in the file there. And I'm going to hit Control K at the end of it. Then I'm going to grab that, and I'm going to kill it with delete. Then I'm going to come down here. I'm going to take the pickup that I recorded, right-click, drag it up here, copy. And that way I have the original, and then this one is right here. And I'm going to put a little bit of an overlap, a little bit of a crossfade. Shrink this just a smidge. Get rid of the space there, and then put it back up to the full size that it was at beforehand. And that's how you splice in a pickup. It's that easy. It's not hard at all. So, all right, I'm going to leave it at that. Once again, very heavy on the multitrack editor. I should undo all those because I don't... Well, this is all a working presentation anyway. The original Chapter 4 is completely somewhere else on my file system, so I guess it doesn't really matter. But that is how I do all my production process, other than the actual recording, which is just normal straight-up punch and roll recording, which you can totally see how to do that with Travis Baldry's plugin. He has a video on it that's really good on how to use it, and it's fantastic. I love it a lot. But this is particularly how I do my production process after the recording is done, using the multi-track editor and leveraging a lot of what I do. So I'd like, once again, to give a huge shout-out to Mike Russell, who taught me how to do a lot of this through his videos. He's absolutely fantastic. I highly recommend checking out his channel, Music Radio Creative. It's really cool. He does a lot of really cool stuff. I would not suggest using the same stacks as he does for all his production process, because his is for radio, and radio uses a lot more compression than audiobooks should ever have. I learned that you shouldn't really use a hard limiter if you don't have to, because when a hard limiter runs, it's running a compression on the signal at a 10-to-1 sampling. Not sampling, but ratio. It's a 10-to-1. In an audiobook, I'm loath to do anything more than a 3-to-1. And that's even if I have to. I'm much more happy to do a 2-to-1 on the compression, but we should never in audiobooks do anything more than 3-to-1. And a hard limiter does 10. Oof. Anyway. All right. I hope this was beneficial for you all. I hope you were able to get something out of it, and hopefully we're able to bring something into your production process. I hope it I hope it'll help you at least be able to try something new and maybe make your work a little bit faster. So if you guys ever have any questions, feel free to hit me up on any of the Facebook groups, or just send me a message at my Twitter, Scott Hart Voice, or just send me an email, scotthartvoice@gmail.com. I actually need to make that part of my website domain so I can have scott@scotthartvoice.com. So anyway, if you ever have any questions on any of this, please feel free to send me a message. I'm more than happy to help you guys. All right. Hope you guys all have a wonderful rest of your day. Take care. Peace out.